I'm looking forward to today's show, partly because since our last show, we had an announcement in the news, and that announcement was that the property market is opened back up, apparently. Okay, so what that basically means is now, today, we can again find out what's going on, go on viewings, etc., etc., etc. We don't have to stay at home like everybody else. So, guys, tell me in the chat box, tell me in the comments, tell me in the live chat what you think about that. What do you think about the fact the government have now opened up the market for property investors to be able to crack on, to be able to go view, to be able to go see stuff, etc., etc. I've already done my first viewing. I'm one of those people, I like to be the early bird. They say the early bird usually catches the worm. So I've got on my first viewing since the opening up. Everything opened up on Wednesday, and I went on a viewing on Wednesday. Yeah, that sounds about right. So that's Samuel I Can Win, and that's how I get down. I'm one of those people who don't like wasting time, and I want to encourage you, if you want to go find property, you need to very quickly become one of those people also who do not like to waste time. So without further ado, let's not waste any more time. We are going to open up the telephone lines in order to accept callers to call in and let us know if they've got specific systems or things going on, scenarios and situations going on that they'd like us to help them to strategize through. Now, are you guys ready for the for the phone to come open? Let's find out. What I'd like you to do, if you are on the show, is hit the like button, just so you can tell the YouTube world that this is some good content. Hit the share button so you can let your own friends, family, and followers connect with the kind of content that you're out here listening to. And side by side with that, write in the comments, I'm ready to go. Write in the comments, I'm ready to go. Let us know that you're ready to go. Why don't you write in the comments, ready to go? Now, without further ado, phone lines open. Feel free to take full advantage of the telephone number up on the screen, as well as the access code also up on the screen. And just by calling in, utilizing the access code, the team will route the call through to me, and I'll be able to work with you through whichever kind of situation you have got going on. All right, I've got Yogesh saying, hello, Samuel, better to be open. I totally agree, Yogesh. I am in the property industry, so I don't like it when the industry's closed, because then we have to find other creative ways to do things. And there's nothing wrong with creativity, but, I can utilize the creativity for some other more relevant things. I'll put it that way. So guys, we've already been doing that for a number of weeks. Over the last 6 weeks, we've been running these shows usually on a Friday. This week we didn't do the show on a Friday. Last week I was battling toothache, so unfortunately I wasn't able to jump on. But basically the purpose of the Strategy in the Storm, the purpose of these property Q&A shows, is basically to open up an opportunity. And by opening up this opportunity, we give the property climate, the property environment, property people an opportunity to call in, phone in, okay, and basically say to us, this is what I'm going through, these are my challenges, this is where I need help, etc., etc., etc. So all we are here to do is help you move forward in your property journey. So if you want that help, feel free to write in the comments, I want help, and we're here to help you. Okay, this is absolutely free of charge. We jump on YouTube, absolutely free platform, in order to give people value in this way. And we're here on a weekly basis, making sure that our live streams go for a minimum of an hour, giving value by answering questions that people need answered. Okay, and we've answered a whole bunch of really challenging questions for so many people over the last couple of weeks, which I've seen been really valuable for people over the last couple of weeks. So again, if you're someone who's got value from one of these live streams over the last couple of weeks, feel free to just write the word value in the comments as well. Feel free to write the word value in the comments so that other people who are watching this can also see that you've been able to get value through means of these live shows. Now, these live shows were created for you guys. They're not created, for me. They're all about you, all about helping you move forward in your property journey, because that's what we want to do. And the best way we find to do that is by actually just making ourselves available and just simply adding value. So if there's any way we can add value to you on this show, we are looking forward to doing so. Now, look, as I've mentioned, this show's on a Saturday today. Okay, and the reason we've come out on a Saturday is because we still wanted to give the value. Okay, we didn't want to have the fact that we weren't going to be here for most of the days in the week last week to then end up meaning we was not going to do a live show. So we decided that we will shift the live show to another day but still make it happen. So I hope that you guys are thankful, grateful and appreciative that we've still done that for you guys. But like I said, you know, the show's open for you in order to give you value in this current climate. Now, there's a few things I want to actually discuss before we actually even go into the phones. So let me see if I can actually do that. I did mention obviously already that we've already had the announcement that there is the opening up of the property market. Okay, and I've thought already that that's been quite interesting for several different reasons. But one of the main reasons I found that interesting is because of the simple fact that with the property market opening up side by side, and I think a lot of people have forgotten this, but this is a very, very important thing. All right, guys, I'm getting some messages saying the volume is low, and I think I've changed that, so I think it should be fine. If the volume isn't better now, please let me know, and I'll get someone in the team to look at it. But I do believe the volume should be fine now. So excellent. I'm just getting the comments coming in now, ready to go. Excellent. All right, so like I was saying, basically we had some challenges. I'm muddling things up now. Anyway, let's jump straight back into it. So I mentioned earlier on inside of the live stream that we had the property market opening up this week. On Wednesday, it was announced, well, it was prior to Wednesday, but it was announced that on Wednesday, basically agents would be allowed to basically, you know, start conducting viewings again, reopen the market, etc., which was quite interesting. And one of the things that a lot of people are not mentioning side by side with this same factor, which I think is extremely important, which is the reason why I'm bringing it up, is the simple fact that if you are mindful of what's been going on, the construction market was recently allowed to open up a little bit prior. Okay, and this is a very important factor. A lot of people might think, oh, look, you know, what's really the connection? But the connection is this: if you open up the construction market, if you allow people to start going back and doing developments, you allow people to start doing refurbishments, you allow people to start doing one side of the property world, but not the other side of the property world, you're very quickly going to create a bottleneck. Okay, and people do not like bottlenecks. Bottlenecks are not helpful. Okay, we've got the team saying we've got our first caller coming in. So if that caller could just hold on for me for one moment. So like we were saying, you know, unfortunately we end up with a bottleneck if that was supposed to happen. So last week we heard that basically the construction arm of property will be allowed back out, and that's why for me it was no surprise that this week we then heard that basically the other arm of the property world are going to be allowed back out through means of viewings, etc. So guys, if you are one of the people that have been watching this show over the last 6 weeks, write the word value in the comments just to show other people that you've been getting value. But side by side with that, you would have been one of those people who would have known that I would have shared that very soon is probably going to open up, because of the simple fact that previously we had the construction market opening up. So without further ado, let's jump on the phones. Let's see what our first caller has to say in terms of what help and support we can give them through means of this session. So let me see if I can get the first caller on. 329. Hello, good evening. Hi, good evening, caller 329. Who am I speaking with? Hi, Darren. Nice to have you on the call. I'm good. I'm very, very well. I'm very, very well. Okay, Darren, just two questions quickly. Are you happy for the YouTube world to hear whatever questions you're going to ask me? Excellent. And are you also happy for them to hear whatever kind of solutions and feedback I'll give you in the session as well? Absolutely perfect. All right, guys. So, guys, just write in the comments that you can hear me and you can hear Darren. Darren is on the phone. Just write in the comments you can hear me and you can hear Darren. And I believe the team are working on increasing the audio for those of you who said you had audio issues as well. So, Darren, let's jump straight in. How can we help you? What's the property challenge that you have? Yeah. So say that again. It's on the sixth. It's on the sixth floor of fifth floor of a 16th floor tower block. Okay, cool. All right, cool. Powerful question. All right, so if you guys can't hear, I'm just going to feed it back to you. Darren's basically said he hasn't bought a property before. This will be his first ever property acquisition. He's in a situation where he has a property opportunity. He has the right to buy a studio flat. And he said this studio flat is on the fifth floor in a 16-floor tower block. And he's asking, he said that he's heard in the past that sometimes those kind of opportunities are harder to get mortgages on. And he wants to know basically whether we think it's a good investment and something for him to move forward on. Now, always start with questions. That's what I'll say, Darren. So the first kind of questions you want to assess is market desire, market passion for your particular asset. So the first kind of question I'll throw to you is, if you were to acquire this property through means of the right to buy, what would you be doing with it? Would you be, renting it out the moment after you buy it and going to live somewhere else? Would you be trying to renovate it and in a few years, because of the right to buy legislation, selling it on? Would you be trying to refinance it? Do you have a plan? I guess that's the better question. Do you have a plan of what you aim to do after buying the property? All right, cool. So renovate, rent, and then sell. Now, how soon do you think you're going to be, I guess I can ask the first question, renovating and then renting out after purchasing? All right, all right, perfect. So almost immediately. And then the next question would be, if you were to do the right to buy, okay, have you checked out any demand metrics for your property? So when I say demand metrics, I mean, have you looked around to see, if there's a lot of studios, apartments available for rent, what kind of rental income they generally generate, and how many there are as a ratio available to how many are desired, if that makes sense? All right, cool. So with the idea. All right, cool. That's cool. That's cool. First thing I'd say, you got a pen and paper with you? All right. First thing I'd say is point number one, you want to assess market demand. Okay. Yeah. Point number one is assess market demand. So I'm going to give you my views in a moment, but I'll give you some steps that you can use to move forward anyway for right now. So the first thing you want to do is assess market demand. Now, the reason I'm saying you want to assess market demand is for something very, very simple. Business operates, I share this all the time. People always lose sight of this fact, but business operate off two principles, and that's supply and demand. Okay. So if you have a property you're renting out, you now have a property business. Okay. So you have the supply of a product, i.e. a property, a studio, apartment, etc. And then you need to find out if there's demand for that product. If there's ample demand for that product, you will have no problem having that product and making money from that product. Does that make sense? Yeah. So based on that fact, the first thing you ever want to do if you're thinking of acquiring a property is find out, is there a demand for my intention or for this property? Now, the reality is nobody knows the future. We don't know 2 days ahead of us. We don't know 24 hours ahead of us. But from the current climate right now, that will be the question you want to ask yourself. Now, one of the great things for you is because we're in this weird and wacky time and season right now, for most people, the results you're going to find are going to actually be results that are going to be helpful for you, if that makes sense. Because let me break it down this way. If I look at a market in its most optimistic time and I get kind of an idea of what I should do in that market, then that's great. But if I look at a market in a challenging time and get an idea of what I should do, then that's when I'm getting the best results, the best ideas of what to do, because I'm in a challenging time. So if this will work in a challenging time, then it's going to be even easier to make something like this happen in a more affluent time, if that makes sense. Yeah. So I'd say start assessing the market demand. And the way you do that, because you said it's a studio, it's on the smaller scale of property, go and look at a website called spareroom.co.uk. Yeah. Spare room. Yeah. www.spareroom. So I'll spell it for you. S for sugar, P for papa, A for apple, R for Romeo, E for Echo, and then room, Romeo, Oscar, Oscar, M for Mama. Yeah. Spareroom.com or spareroom.co.uk. Now, when you check that website is a website, it's a portal which people generally use to advertise rooms. Obviously, because I specialize in HMOs, it's a website I'm very familiar with. But basically, people advertise rooms that are available to rent, or people search for rooms on there. So because you've got a studio which is a fairly smaller unit size, spare room will fit in terms of what you're looking for. So after spare room, some of the secondary places you want to check are probably Rightmove, and then obviously Zoopla, etc. But the core for you is probably going to be spare room. So what you're going to do on spare room, you're going to go on there, you're going to put in the postcode of the particular property, and first and foremost, you're going to look as though you're looking for a studio apartment. Okay, so you're going to act as though I'm looking for the potential product you will have in the future. Okay, so good evening, Remy, who's just jumped on. So yeah, so basically start by looking for what you already have. Now, if you start looking for a property that's exactly the same as what you're going to have, you will start to be able to assess the demand. So what do I mean by that? I'll give you an example. If you find that there are 500 people, well, actually, we'll come to that in a minute. So as you start looking for your own studio, the first thing you're going to find is a number of studios that are on already, or you might find in some cases that there are no studios on already. Now, if you start finding studios on already, few things you want to be looking at is what kind of standard are these studios done to, and how much roughly are they asking for in terms of the prices. Another thing you can start looking at, because you haven't bought a property before, this will be helpful for you as well, is start looking at where the prices change and why. Okay, so I'll give you an example. In most markets, people think prices only change because of standard, i.e., I'm looking at a really ugly property. Because it's an ugly property, oh, that's the reason why it's only £500 a month for that room. I'm looking at an amazing property. Oh, that's the reason why this one's $600 a month. Oh, I'm looking at a property that shouldn't even be a room in a shared house, and that's the reason why this one's $700 a month. That's not the only factor. Like, condition and standard is not the only factor which fluctuates price. Prices also fluctuate from other metrics. One of the metrics is location. And when I say location, because we're in London, it's not only major location, it's also micro location. So what I mean is, you might be on a street. If we take like Streatham, for example, Streatham's got this very long street, the main road, where on certain parts prices are going to be really high, on certain parts prices are going to be really low. And the real reason why that happens a lot of the time is because you might have different densities of different kinds of demographics. So you might have a high population on one part of the street of council tenants. You might then have a high population on another side of the street of private owned occupancies in terms of properties. So the point I'm making is, just start asking yourself as you're looking at these properties, why do you think the prices are changing of these different studios? And that will help you when you start your process of doing a refurb, etc., etc. You can start saying to yourself, okay, this is how I want to do this is how I want to do that, in order for your refurb to go really, really well. All right, so I've got people saying they can't hear you, Darren, which should be cool because I've repeated everything you've said. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna see if I can get the team to work on that as well, and that should be fine. All right, so they're the first few things I'd say. All right, so you want to assess market demand, and the way you're going to assess market demand is by basically going on spareroom.co.uk. The first half of what you're going to do on spareroom.co.uk is try to look for what you're going to be offering in the future. The second thing you're going to do is you're then going to try to look for people looking for what you're going to offer. So the way you do that is, instead of saying, oh, I'm looking for a studio flat in this postcode, you're then going to say, I have a studio flat in this postcode. Does that make sense? Excellent. So when you start saying you have a studio flat in that area, you're basically going to now find a whole bunch of people who basically are looking for your kind of property, the kind of property that you will have in the future. Okay, so the key with that, when you start finding those people, is for you to now start to assess, okay, what are they looking for specifically? Which specific street do they want to stay in? Why do they want to stay in that street? You know, is there something, is there a landmark? Is there a shopping center? Is there a feature of that street which makes that street the key for everybody? You know, and that's the kind of thing you want to try and go for then. Yeah. So that's assessing the market demand. And what you can do, like if this was like a proper training, I could go through it in more depth. But what I'm gonna break down for you guys, for you and the viewers a little bit more, is what you're trying to do when you're looking at the amount of properties available is find out if there's a number very clearly of how many are available. So I'll give an example. If you find that there are 50 studio apartments available right now, and there are roughly 100 studio or people looking for studio apartments, that shows you there's a 2-to-1 ratio. So for every studio apartment available, there's 2 people looking for one. Does that make sense? Yeah. So the better that ratio is, the better the demand perceivably is from that metric. So that's going to be important for you when you now say, okay, well, in the next 6 to 8 months or 12 months, what I'm trying to do is actually buy a property through the right to buy, convert that property through means of a refurbishment. And the moment after I've converted that property through means of my refurbishment, I'm then going to be offering that out in order to rent it. And when I offer it out to rent it, basically I know, or I'm very confident that there's going to be a demand for that, because there's a heavy demand for these kind of properties, specifically XYZ. So when I say specifically XYZ, that's when you add in the facts that you found at the beginning when you started to do your original checks, i.e., for example, asking yourself the question, what are the reasons that the price fluctuate? Okay, so I'm going to give you a few reasons that I found prices fluctuate in certain areas, which might be important. One of them might be, which is quite obvious, an ensuite, for example. Okay, there's certain areas where just adding an ensuite to a room, obviously if you're in a studio it's a bit different, but if we're talking a HMO room, there's certain areas where just adding an ensuite to a room will increase your rent by close to £100 every single month. Okay, now considering an ensuite can cost you anywhere between £2,000 and £5,000 to put in, you know, getting £100 every single month, which over a year is going to be £1,000, and over 2 years is going to be all your money paid back. That's a worthwhile investment to have if you've got control of a property for 5 years, or if you actually own a property. If you think about it, because after 2 years you get your money back just for that investment alone, from the room alone. Yeah. So yeah, that's what I'd say. So in terms of my views on the particular property and whether you should buy it, now, first thing I'd say is very rare, in my opinion, for a right to buy to not make sense as an acquisition. That's the first thing I'd say. I'm not saying this for you specifically, I'm just saying this generally. Okay, of all the people I've come across who have right to buy opportunities, it's been very rare that I come across a right to buy opportunity that doesn't make sense, because of the discount that the council are going to give you. You know, being able to lock in, you know, what, a 50% discount or some substantial discount on the property is usually a great thing. So that's the first thing I'd say. So in terms of my opinion, it's rare that it's going to not stack up. The next thing I'd say to you is start asking yourself wider questions about the desire for that property. So what I mean about wider questions is, where is that property? Like, are you close to a station? Are you in the middle of nowhere? Yes, okay, it's in a high rise, but if it's in a high rise, who else in the high rise actually owns that property? If you're on a 16th floor block, how many other people actually have done right to buy over the years? Because there should be presumptuously another 1 or 2 people, 3 or 4, maybe even 10 people that have bought their flat. And the thing is, look, I'm going to be totally honest with you. Most people don't say stuff like this, but I'm just being transparent. Go knock on those people's doors when you find out who they are and have a conversation with them. Oh, you bought your flat. What was your intention when you bought it? Was your intention just to, buy it just so you own something? Or did you want to buy it, refurbish it and rent it out to someone else? Have you been able to achieve what you wanted to achieve? What were your kind of stumbling blocks? Have a real conversation with real people. Like the same way I advocate people having a property coach, it's the same way I advocate people having a conversation with someone who's further ahead than them. So that's what I'm saying that you can think about doing. You can think about having a conversation with other people who potentially have already done right to buy in your block, because it is a high-rise block. Now, in terms of what you mentioned about the mortgage, this is what I'm going to say about that. If you've got a good broker, getting a mortgage in a high-rise block is not going to be a big problem. Okay, let me add this as a caveat. As long as everything else is in place, i.e. your financial position, etc., the least of your worries is probably going to be getting a mortgage product. Okay, because people have been doing mortgages for a long time in high-rise blocks, especially for people who are doing right to buys. But the question is, is everything else in place? But the key is, if you did get that and they put that all through for you, that's all going to be great. But the question you're asking, you're coming on the show to ask, in my opinion, is the best question. Like, is this actually an asset that I should buy? Is it worth buying, etc.? Does that make sense? All right, cool. Anything else, Darren? Whether they stuck up? Yeah, yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you. Go on. Yeah. All right, that's a good question again. All right, guys. So for those of you who said you can't hear Darren, Darren's just asked another key question. He said, because I've mentioned about the mortgage process, he said if his finances is not in a good position, will that be a major hindrance to or for the lender specifically on a mortgage? Now, what I'll say is this. The answer is it doesn't have to be. It depends on how bad it is. Okay. And a lot of people don't realize this, but it really just does depend on how bad it is. So when I say how bad it is, so for example, there's certain mortgage brokers who specialize in working with people with adverse credit histories. So there's some mortgage brokers who know I'm going to come across clients whose credit history is really, really bad. And as a result, they've spent the last 10 years, 5 years, 2 years, whatever it is for themselves, getting really good at helping people with poor credit scores or people who have CCJs, etc., etc. So the point I'm making when I say that is there are some people in terms of brokers who specialize in what we're talking about, in specialize in helping people who have that kind of situation. So don't be too worried about that. The key is just to find the right broker for you. Now, like I said, the real caveat about it is what's the specific mortgage issue. Okay, what's the specific mortgage issue? So if, for example, you said to me, look, Samuel, 10 years ago, I had 3 T-Mobile bills that didn't get paid. Now I got 3 CCJs, all from T-Mobile. There's such things. And again, this is something we don't talk about a lot in the UK. Maybe people should talk about it a lot more. Maybe I'll bring a guest on the show to start talking about this because it's quite important. There's such things as credit repair. You can actually repair your credit over a period of time. So if you take a 6-month, 12-month, 18-month period, you can actually restore your credit and actually improve your credit. There's certain people who have, terrible credit scores, but they can improve that. And credit scores are a byproduct of all the things we're talking about as well, Darren, whether it's, late payments, missed payments, CCJs, etc., etc. So that's what I'd say. Yeah. Guys, to anybody who's saying that we're breaking up, please just restart, log out, log in, jump off, jump back on. I think it's going to be the solution. I had 3 people that have said they've logged off and logged back in, and it's actually perfect for them now. I believe you guys can actually hear Darren now as well. I think the team's been able to sort that out. And last but not least, if you're getting value from the answers that we're sharing with Darren and anyone else on the stream, hit like, press subscribe, and hit the bell notification. So Darren, so going back to the point, first thing in terms of the asset, just work out whether there's a real demand for it in light of what you've chosen to do with it, which is rent it out. And then the second thing I'd say to you is definitely think to yourself, if there is a credit issue, can you find a broker you can work with who can work with you through means of that specifically? Now, the reason I'm going to say that is this. We've got a comment in the chat. And the comment in the chat basically says, okay, let me check this quickly. The comment says, you could find a mortgage host to help you with the mortgage too. All right. Now, the reason I want to bring that up is because you can't do that. Okay. So the person who's put that in the chat is not entirely accurate. Okay. And the only reason it's not accurate for you is because you've got a right to buy. Right to buy doesn't work the way typical purchases operate. So because of that, you couldn't get a mortgage host. And if you don't know what a mortgage host is just someone who comes and represents you as the mortgageable character whilst you get the mortgage, but you don't have to get the mortgage yourself. But when you have a right to buy, you can't do that. So I'm just sharing that because I don't want anyone to go out there and trying to get a mortgage host and then find out they can't get a mortgage host and then be saying, oh, someone commented that on Samuel's show and that's what I thought was the solution. All right, so I hope that helps as well.
Yeah, that's definitely.
All right, Darren, no problem. Go for it.
I'll ask about,
Go on.
last thing I'll ask about is like sell-on ability.
Good question.
After I've had it for a number of years, what's the potential sell-on for that?
Good question.
Being in, yeah. So yeah.
All right, good question. So Darren's asked as the third part of the question, kind of, if he wants to sell it on in the future, what are my thoughts on that in terms of just generally? So what I'd say to you generally is this, to be mindful of, Darren. If you're selling it on to an investor's only going to be thinking about, if we put it frankly, they're going to be thinking about bottom line. They're going to be thinking about money. How much money can I make from this opportunity / asset? If you're selling it on to a homeowner, then they're just going to be thinking about a home, i.e., is this the perfect home to meet my needs for the amount of time I'm trying to meet those needs for? So if they want to buy a studio flat as their first apartment in a particular area so that in 2-3 years they can then sell it on and buy something else, then the question is, does it fit for that purpose? And then the same going back to the investor. If the investor is in a position where he's buying to make money, the question for the investor is, does it work for his purpose? So if you go back to the first thing I was saying to you about looking at the demand, it's the demand at the time you're planning to sell that you're now going to have to use to basically sell this ideology or this product, this property onto another investor, if it's going to be an investor, as this is why you want to buy this studio flat, because look at the kind of revenue it can generate if you look at this market or tap into that market, etc., etc. So the real key is to think about, okay, if I want to sell this in 8 years, 9 years, 10 years, who do I want to sell it to? Okay, and what's going to be their interest? Is their interest going to be just making as much money as they can, or is their interest going to be something else? Is their interest going to be, is it really close to the nearest whatever tube station so I can just make sure I can get to work quickly? So when you are considering the resale, that's what I'd say to start with. Start asking yourself that question: who's the most likely person to buy that property? I would say in a high rise these days, I think there's a lot less investors that are going to probably be into that. So you're probably more so looking at someone who's a first time buyer, buying to be able to get onto the ladder and buy their first property. So the question is, okay, what amenities in the local area currently and potentially in the future are going to draw people into that? And again, you got to remember, you are in a high rise. So one of the things I'll add to you, I wasn't going to go into this, but just to give you a bit more value in terms of that, is start asking yourself about the price brackets. Okay, this is another thing a lot of people don't look at, something I talk to a lot of my coaches about at times. Look at the price brackets. So what do I mean by price brackets? In every property market, there are price bandings. Okay, so those price bandings basically take you from one stream of property to the next stream of property. All right, so when I say one stream of property to the next stream of property, what do I mean? For example, I'll give you an example. If you look at a studio flat, because you've said it's a studio, actually, let's go all the way down. Okay, and I'm going to talk in terms of rent, and then after I talk in terms of rent, I'll then go into talking in terms of purchasing, acquisition, which is what you're talking about. All right, and guys, for those of you who are watching, if you're getting value, just write the word value in the comments, okay? Because Darren's allowed me to go into like 3 different areas now, and I think where we are right now is going to be a lot of value. So write the word value in the comments if you're getting value. All right, Darren, so just to start with, first thing, let's talk about rental. Okay, if you're talking about a rental market, the way that the rental market basically generally tends to work is that the smallest additional or the smallest component in a rental market is a room. Okay, the smallest thing you can rent in the UK or in London, let's just talk about London, is a room. Okay, so if you're renting a room, for example, the question is, okay, how much in that area can you rent a room for? And let's say you can rent a room in that area for £400 a month. Okay, so that's just a finger in the air assumption. You could rent a room in this area for £400 a month. Okay, now let's extrapolate the idea into the next denomination of a property. The next denomination of a property is going to be, from a room, a studio. So let's say the studio, the lowest price you're going to get a studio in a particular area, let's just say, for example, let's say that's £700. Yeah. So what we've just done there is we've just identified 2 price bandings. Okay. Now you might find the lowest studio apartment rent is 700, but the highest studio apartment rent is 900. Okay, so a studio is never going to get, it's very unlikely to get more than £900, and equally it's very unlikely for it to get less than £700. Then when you go down to the rooms, you can do the same thing. You can say, look, it's very rare for a room to rent out for more than whatever, let's say 550, and it's also rare for it to rent less than 350. So you've got 2 bandings now: bandings for rooms, bandings for studios, and you can do that all the way up to a 6-bed, 7-bed, 10-bed, 12-bed, whatever you want to do. Okay. And start to identify bandings. Now, I'm going to say this because a lot of people don't realize this. Lots of bandings do overlap. Property bandings can overlap. Okay. A property banding is not just going to always be on one level. Like, they can overlap. You can get, you know, a small studio apartment maybe for like 900 and still get a large a large HMO room with an ensuite maybe for 900. Okay, so they can overlap, but if you take out the ideology of the fact that they can overlap, you still just want to find your bandings. Now, the same way you can find bandings with rentals, you also can find bandings with sales. It's actually easier to do it with sales. So the reason I'm saying that to you is when you start doing your bandings, that's going to help you when you're thinking about selling your property in the future. The reason why is because if a studio only sells at max for 300k, but you've got 1 beds and 2 beds for sale at 305, or 1 beds and 2 beds, let's say a 1-bedroom flat, you could probably buy derelict for 250. Okay. The problem with that now is you've got an amazing studio, which you're trying to get 300 for, but someone could buy a rundown 1 bed for 250, spend less than 50 doing it up, and for less than the 300, they've got something bigger and potentially more valuable than what you're offering. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
So that's one thing I would definitely say to you just to think about. Think about the price bandings, because price bandings can play a part, especially when you're looking at the smaller scale of the market, i.e. studio flats, etc., in terms of people's demand. Some people might say, yeah, I'd buy a studio all day long for 250. But then the moment they find that there's a 1-bedroom flat, which is derelict, for 210, it's like, well, I'd actually prefer to add the extra 40 or 30 and do up the 1-bed flat than to have the beautiful studio. Does that make sense?
It does. But then in this case,
go for
it being a right to buy, that discount that the council offer should sort of negate some of those issues, right?
Yes and no.
It should still be within the brand.
Perfect question. All right, guys, let me know in the comments. Let me know in the chat if you can hear Darren now, guys. I believe you can, but let me know in the chat if you can hear Darren. Darren's just asked a brilliant question. So Darren's just said, in light of what I've said about price bandings, the fact that you have a right to buy and thus a discount, a significant discount, that should mitigate the fact that basically there's price bandings. Now, the answer to that is yes and no. And the yes part is this: it can, because of the fact that you're buying it for cheaper. But also, if you think about it, you're trying to buy that to make money, right? You're not just trying to buy the property to say, oh, I've bought a property. And when you're selling it, you're not just selling it to say, oh, I've sold a property. So you still want to sell for market value. And I'll give you an example. Let's say, okay, let's break all the numbers down. Let's say you got this studio flat for 250. Let's say that the council discount is 50,000, just for the sake of easy numbers. So you could potentially buy this studio flat for 200,000. Let's say you buy it for 200,000. First thing, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but I'll share this because I know all of this stuff's going to be of value. First thing, do you know that obviously if you buy a council flat for the first 5 years, you cannot sell it, right? Well, let me finish that. For the first 5 years, you cannot sell it without paying back a proportion of the discount to the council. Yeah?
Yeah, I know that.
All right, cool. So what that means is most
5 years.
Say that again, Darren.
Sorry, I was saying you have to hold it for you have to hold it for 5 years to sort of reap the full benefit.
Yeah, of the discount. That's totally right. So the first thing with that is, if you're gonna buy it and your plan long term is to sell it, we already know from that factor you're not selling it in the first 5 years, because any time in the first 5 years you sell it, you're reducing the ability for that discount to be a benefit to you. Does that make sense? Yeah. All right, cool. So now let's move outside of those 5 years. Okay. Now, from my knowledge, I think in the first 10 years, which includes those first 5 years, so 5 years after the first 5 years we just spoke about, if you do sell the property, you then have to offer it to the council with first refusal. Yeah.
After 5 years.
Yeah. So again, this is stuff which you can check. You know, it might have changed last week under the current climate. These might be things that they've changed, but to the best of my knowledge, that was the current situation from when I checked last, which was probably 2019. Okay, so at beginning of 2019, end of 2018, to the best of my knowledge, the way it worked is you could buy the right to buy. You will take advantage of the discount. The first 5 years, if you sell it back, or if you offer to sell it in the first year and you find a buyer, whether it be the council or someone else, in the first year, you'll pay back 100% of the discount. Second year, you'll pay back 80% of the discount. Third year, you pay back 60% of the discount. Fourth year, you pay back 40% of the discount. Fifth year, you pay back 20% of the discount. Then after the fifth year, if you sell it, you don't pay any of the discount back. You get all of the discount for yourself. Yeah. But from my knowledge, year 6, year 7, year 8, year 9, year 10, all of those years, the council have to be given the first refusal on the property to buy it. Now, that's not a big problem, because obviously it just means if you do sell it to the council, apparently they're supposed to pay market value for it, which might even help you. But the reality with this is just the fact that if you rule out the first 5 years and you've got a discount of 50k, for example, outside of the first 5 years, the question is, how much does that discount really mean? Because depending on what the property market does will determine how big that 50 or 100 or 200 or whatever discount they give you actually becomes. So what do I mean by that? Well, if you're in a market where the property price is booming, okay, it's going up for the next 5 years, then you getting a 50k discount is great, but the market is going to give you even more of a discount in that sense because the prices are going up. Whereas if the prices aren't doing anything, then that 50k again becomes great. But if the prices are actually going backwards, for example, doesn't happen often, but if that was happening, if prices were reducing, then that 50k is getting eaten up by time. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. So the point I'm making is, I guess, yeah, if I'm going to do this, Darren, I'm going to be very blunt. Yeah. What I'm saying to you is this: think like an investor. Yeah. And if you're thinking like an investor, you want to buy this asset. You want to do exactly what you've said you want to do with it, i.e. do it up, rent it out, make as much money as you can over the time, and then sell it. But don't think, oh, because I've got a discount, I should sell it for 20k less just to make sure I can sell it. It's better, it's better to think, well, how can I maximize my sell value and then also increase the opportunity to walk away with more funds? And obviously the fact you got a discount helps you do that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does, totally.
Yeah. All right, Darren. But look, take full advantage. Take full advantage. I would say, like I said, it's very rare cases that I see a right to buy which don't make sense. The key is you just have to have a plan that makes sense to utilize it to the best of your ability. So what you said to me, I think is a good plan. Buy, renovate, rent out, and then in the future potentially sell. Or just look at if it makes sense to buy, renovate, rent out, and just rent out. If you don't need that money, then you could rent that out and potentially you could be making a good revenue, especially if it's in a good location in London and where you're going to move to is not going to ask for too much in terms of funds. That could be a very good trade-off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
All right, Darren, thank you for calling in. Much appreciated. And we look forward to catching up with you in the future.
Thank you very much.
Most welcome. All right, guys, we got another call we're going to go on to straight away. Great call from Darren. Lots of value there as well. If you got value, guys, feel free to write value in the comments, and at the same time feel free to hit like, hit subscribe, so we know that you are getting value from the content. All right, guys, caller 9706, good evening.
Oh, hi.
Hi,
it's
Yogesh.
Here.
Hi, Yogesh. I can tell. How you doing, Yogesh?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Excellent. I'm doing well, thank you. Feeling much better.
Good. Yeah, it's a bit glitchy on the YouTube, just to let you know.
Do apologize,
so
guys.
It's actually easier. Oh, yeah.
Excellent. I prefer that anyway. All right, guys, I do apologize. Yogesh has just said it's a bit glitchy on the YouTube. I do apologize. This is part of the problem of being on YouTube. YouTube on YouTube. So yeah, we can only do what they allow us to do on the platform. But Yogesh, how can we help you? Let's strategize.
So it's more about building your power team, building your network.
Yep.
I realised the better it is, the better you do. So the question is around how do I build on my network and create an even better team or better contacts that I have in my phone book if I ever need any help with any particular problem.
Yep.
and linking with that social media,
Mm-hmm.
can that help me build my power team? And if so, what is the best way? I'm a semi-private person, so I don't really like close family and close friends knowing the details of what I'm up to.
Mm-hmm.
But is there a way to use social media where perhaps you can do things without them knowing specifics, but still get credibility from
When you
the property circle?
Yeah, I think I'm getting your question. And guys, I hope you can all hear Yogesh. If you can hear Yogesh, just put thumbs up inside of the chat so I know that you can hear Yogesh clearly. Um, I'm I'm gonna come. Yeah, okay. So Yogesh has basically started by saying the first kind of key question he wants us to discuss is, can you? How do? I guess it's it's a more broad, open question. The first broad and open question Yogesh is asking is, how do you build your property power team? He made a comment which I think you guys should write down as a quote in your notebooks, in your iPads or tablets, whatever you're taking notes in. Yogesh said, from his understanding, the better your power team, the better you can do in property. And I think that's a very, very powerful statement to make. And I think it's very, very true. The better your power team, the better you can do in property. So just put Yogesh Patel right by that, because I think that's a really powerful statement. So thank you for sharing that, Yogesh. So Yogesh's first question was basically, let's talk more about how to build a power team. And then Yogesh went on to second, saying, well, he's quite a private person, so he wants to be able to potentially tap into social media, but without actually sharing too much or divulging too much about what he's doing specifically or the information about himself specifically. Is that a good summary of your question, Yogesh?
Yeah, it's more like, I don't want close family and friends knowing, but I don't mind people outside that circle know what I'm up to. But yes.
Okay, so Yogesh has said he doesn't mind close family. He doesn't want close family and friends knowing what he's doing, but he doesn't mind other people outside of that circle knowing what he's doing. Is that correct? Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, perfect. So the first thing I'd say to you is, again, it comes back to one of the things we spoke about on one of the previous live streams, which I believe you called in. It's really about assessing what you've got to offer people. So what do I mean by that? When you tap into social media, or let's even start with the first. All right. So the first key to building your power team successfully is identifying who you need in a power team. Okay. So I've got a resource, Team 10, which we created some time ago. Okay, and it's a video training program that we created. It's called Team 10. It says at the bottom, discover your property power team by Samuel Ikenwin. Okay, so the reason we created Team 10 is because we saw basically exactly what you just shared as a kind of quote. The better team people had as their power team, the better they could do in their property journey. So our key was, okay, well, how can we help people get better power teams? And I'm going to give you the first key. Okay, and the first key is identify who you need. Okay, the biggest mistake most people have is they haven't identified who they need. Okay, they haven't understood who they need in their power team. They think a power team is a broker and a solicitor, but they don't realize that a power team is an extensive team of people. I'll give you this for free. All right, and this is going to be extreme value for any person who's watching. So again, after I share this, feel free to write value. One of my first ever mentors, okay, very powerful guy, first billionaire that I was ever following, if I put it that way. These days everybody's a billionaire apparently, so these days there's lots of billionaires people are following, but this was years ago. This was 2005, 15 years ago, and this was basically the only billionaire that I actually knew at the time and who I was following. And he said something really powerful. He said to me, look, if you're starting a business, the first thing you want to do is go and find 10 stakeholders, people that may not actually be doing your business, but that have businesses related to your business, that potentially could be valuable people to you just generally, with or without their money. And then you basically want to pitch them your business idea and ask each of them to basically become investors. And he basically said, if each of them invest £10,000, what you then have is £100,000 of investment to start a business. But he said that's not the most valuable thing you have. He said the most valuable thing you have is you now have a non-executive board of directors of people who are all powerful and who are all insightful in terms of your actual industry. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
So the reason I raised that point, Yogesh, is because when I heard that 15 years ago, I thought that was a really powerful statement. I thought, wow, that makes a lot of sense. Like, imagine having £100,000 of seed capital, but more importantly, imagine having 10 mentors, coaches, 10 power players who were behind you, and because you were actually investing their money, you know, they had skin in the game, so that they would be invested in giving you the value, giving you the information, giving you insights, giving you the secrets to make sure that you succeed as well in your endeavor. Now, the reason I share that is because the most value you will get out of those people who would be doing that for you would directly come as a byproduct of you understanding who you needed. Because if you understood exactly who you needed, the side businesses that relate to your business, that will make it even more valuable for your business to thrive. Okay. So I'll give you an example, just a real simple example. No one's going to be thinking of, just to help you think a little bit out of the box. Window cleaners. Okay. A window cleaner for most property people has nothing to do with property. Okay, like, yeah, they clean windows on property, but that's it. They've got nothing to do with property. Imagine, and I'm going to break this down because I didn't see the whole comment, but I know someone wrote a comment about deal sourcing. And guys, we will get to the comments in a moment. If you're getting value, hit value, write value in the comments, hit the like button, smash the subscribe button, and press the bell notification also. So window cleaners. Okay, so someone wrote the comment, a comment about deal sourcing. Now this is why I want to bring this in. If I've got a deal sourcing business and I go and find 5 of the most reputable window cleaners in the local constituencies, which I'm calling my gold mine areas, and I say to these window cleaners, listen, I've got a property business. What we basically do is we find properties, we help people sell properties, we help people rent properties out quickly. And I know you've got a window cleaning business, so I know that you're in windows, you're in houses, you're talking to owners, etc. What I want you to do is, if you ever see a property which looks in disarray next door to a property which you're doing the window cleaning on, or a property that looks like it's never had its windows cleaned, or it just looks a complete mess, what I want you to do is just give me a call and just let me know, Samuel, this property on this street it's in distress, it looks like there's nobody there, and I'll follow up, I'll do the rest. And if I end up making that into a deal, if I end up generating some revenue from that, if I end up making it make sense, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you X back as a kind of thank you. Okay, does that make sense? Yeah,
that makes sense. So,
all right, so go on, Yogesh.
Yeah, go on. I have comment, which is, I was just thought, you couldn't quite know who you might need in the future, because you don't quite know what problem you'll have. Like recently, I've got a party wall problem, but I never really thought I would. Yeah. But I was just thinking about creating anyone related to property, a list of them in case I need them in the future, which is going to take a while and is very broad. But you're saying
be strategic.
Have in mind what you probably
that's right. I'm saying be strategic. Like what I'm basically saying is, first and foremost, okay, so guys, I believe you can hear Yogesh. Yogesh has just said, look, in light of what I've just shared, it's made him realize that you never know who you're going to need in the future. And that is very true. Like, I was taught that when I was young. When I was really young, I can't remember if it was my parents, but I always heard that quote. And I know most of the people watching this have heard that quote. Be nice to every person you meet on your way to the top, because they're the same people you meet on your way back down to the bottom. So I've been taught that since I was very young, and I've stood by that. I try not to treat people with disrespect or disarray, because I don't know who anybody is. All I know is face value. And I've been known to share this quote since I was quite young with people as well. If somebody can play the piano, you have no idea. And I'm not saying that to say, oh, you got to treat him right because he might be your boss tomorrow. I'm just saying it to say, the way the world works, you should just treat everybody with love and respect. It's just a good thing to do. It just makes sense. So the reason I'm bringing all of that up is to start by saying, identify. It all starts with identification. Now, going back to your point and bringing that into this ideology of identification, the reality is, you do not know who you're going to need tomorrow. And that's very true. But you do know who you're going to need if you know what you're trying to do. So what does that mean? As a quick example, if I know I'm trying to buy 15 houses in the next 15 years, I know I'm going to need a broker. I know I'm going to need a broker. Yeah, let's just put that one simply. I know I'm going to need a solicitor. I know I'm going to need a solicitor to do conveyancing. Okay. And then going on further and further and further and further. If I'm trying to do something most people haven't done, I'm probably going to need a coach. Okay. If I'm trying to do something in a faster speed than someone else has done, I might need a mentor. I might need someone who's actually done it before, who can actually tell me, look, Samuel, I did it like this. So the key is it's all about identification. Okay. But when you're talking about a power team specifically, that's when it's definitely about identification. It's about identifying the key players you're going to need and then building out each of those positions. Now, one of the things you can do, here's just some added value, two pieces of added value, hopefully that will help you. The first thing is create a panel. Okay, a lot of people don't understand about creating panels. Panels are extremely valuable. So what do I mean by creating a panel? In our business, in our sourcing business, we have a panel for every position in our power team. So what that means is, if we want to go and talk to a broker, we have a panel of brokers, which is not one broker, it's X amount of brokers that we can sit at a table and have a conversation with. And the same with solicitors, the same with every other factor in terms of that side of the business. So I'm saying that to you, that's a second value add. Let me just say it like that. Second value add. First, start with identification, identify the key players. Second, tap into creating a panel potentially where you have more than one person for each position. And then the third thing, again, an additional value add, tap into networks of networks. Okay. And this is something so many people fail to do. Tap into networks of networks. What do I mean by tap into networks of networks? Now, if you've got an amazing broker who's also a high profile broker. So what I mean by a high profile broker is, this is a broker who's already tapped into certain communities. He's already been on BBC. He's already this, that, blah, blah, blah. Because he's got all of these credentials behind him, he will have a network potentially extremely more extensive than your own network. So this now covers the fact of what you was talking about, where you end up in a situation where you need someone but you never thought you would need them. So let me give you an example. Let's say you've got a power team of 4 people, okay, and you've got each of those 4 positions covered. And let's say you've even taken Samuel's word and you've now created a panel for each of those 4. So you've got 3 people for each of those 4 positions. So now you've got